So just some introductions. I'm Mrs. Tremblett, and I have the letters O through Z for the class of 2025. And then we have Mrs. Maitman over here who has F-E through Z, and Mrs. Payne who has F-I through N. Okay, so we're the three guidance counselors here, and we're each going to take a little piece of this presentation. So I'm going to start. And we will have plenty of time for questions afterwards, so feel free to jot things down as they come along, and we can cover them. Okay, so just very briefly, just want everybody to know that we are going to be having an individual meeting with every junior to personalize this process with them, but this is really what we want them to be doing right now in preparation for their meeting and for this process. So we're going to cover all of this stuff in greater detail, but this is just an overarching to-do list, which is basically reviewing assessments and Naviance that they've done in past years. From freshman year on, we've had students taking personality tests, interest inventories, and other various surveys just to kind of get a better idea of what their interests are and how that applies to potential careers. Then we have them researching the careers. They can do that in a multitude of ways. We just happen to use Naviance as part of our whole program, whether it's college applications as well as occupational research. And we are having juniors research colleges and compare them, and we're going to individualize that in their meetings with them as well. We're going to have them add colleges I'm thinking about in Naviance, which we're going to show you today how to do that. And we also are having students start their resume, because that's a really important part of the process. Hopefully juniors have started to think about a testing plan for the SAT and the ACT, and we'll talk about that in detail, as well as visiting colleges and starting to demonstrate interest to the various colleges that they're serious about. So we talked about self-assessment. This is where, if you want to ask your child, or for juniors who don't remember doing this, this is where the self-assessment started freshman year. So we had them do intelligence, which is a personality test, AchieveWorks personality, learning and productivity, career interest profile, and asked them a series of questions, and then came out with a list of careers that are a good fit for how they answer the questions. These are all designed by psychologists and people in the field, so they're pretty reputable surveys and assessments that kids should do if they haven't already. So, okay, so that's one of the steps. The other thing that juniors really want to start thinking about is how they're going to be evaluated by a college. And these are some of the things that you have to start thinking about now, because you have to prepare for senior year for any areas that you really need to work on and get prepared. So one of the things that we tell students is the most important thing that a college is going to look at in your application is the first thing on the list here, your transcript. The reason why that is because your transcript shows everything you've done over a 4-year period of time. It shows what you took as classes as a freshman and how you finished as a senior. Whether there was growth, maybe there were some classes along the way that you started out really shaky, and then you turned out with, a high B or an A in the class. So there's a lot of things that you can glean from a student's transcript. So it's the most important thing, because it shows growth over time. It shows you 4 years, whereas just an SAT is just how you did on a test one day when you showed up. So on your transcript is your GPA. There's also going to be a percentile rank. We don't rank numerically here at our school, so we don't have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We tell you whether you're in the 5th percentile, 10th percentile, etc. And students will be given their transcripts at their junior meeting, and we will go over that with them. So some of the things on the transcript are challenging classes, like I said, improving over time, exceeding the minimum requirements, what kind of classes that you took, So we'll talk about that with our students individually, but that's something you need to know is really important. You need to keep your grades really strong. Remember, when you're applying to colleges in the fall of your senior year, they're not really going to see your senior year grades most likely before they make a decision, especially if you're applying early. So your junior year is going to be the most important year grade-wise. All right, resume. Definitely want to have a resume, not only for college but also for scholarships, and that becomes really important senior year. So it's good to get a head start on that. And we have that right in Naviance. We recommend the students do it in Naviance because that's where your teacher is going to be writing a letter of recommendation for you, and they're going to be able to see your resume in Naviance once you invite them, which we'll go over in more detail. So activities, leadership, all that good stuff, we'll go over that in a little more detail. So then we have application, which you can do through the Common App, or you can do it on the college website. And then we have the essay, which there's essay prompts that you can do for the Common App. And on this PowerPoint is the link to the ones for this year, but the ones for next year have not come out yet. So we're going to leave the panel today to talk in depth about essays. And so if you guys have any questions about that, they do a really nice job covering that area. Recommendations are something that you're going to have to start thinking about now as a junior, about who you're going to ask for a letter of recommendation from. And you don't have to ask somebody that you have this year. You could ask somebody senior year, but if you have somebody that you really feel like you've established a great relationship with this year, that might be somebody you might want to ask at the end of the year. But you are going to need most likely at least 1 to 2 letters of recommendation. Demonstrated interest is something that we've seen more and more, just about colleges wanting to see you connecting with them socially on their social media, on their emails. They want to see kids visiting their campus. So that's really important if you have a college that's, especially like a reach school that you really want to get into. You want to show them that you're interested. And then we have interview, audition, portfolio. That's only if applicable. If you're going into a theater or art or music, sometimes they do require those. You have to be mindful about that if those are the areas that you're pursuing. And then we're going to talk about standardized tests if it's applicable to the school in more detail. Right? Okay. So most juniors, if they are going to take the SAT, will take it in May and June of their junior year. We are offering one here in March 9th here at DR. So if you want to take it in March and you want to be in a familiar place, then you can register. I don't even know if they're accepting registrations at this point, but it is here, and there's one in May and there's one in June. And if you look on the College Board website, you can see the rest of them. I believe there's a to be determined for August of this year, and then there will obviously be some in the fall. Then there's also the ACT, which is a different type of test. It's still accepted at all colleges, but it just measures different things. It has a different layout. There's some science on there where there's no science on the SAT. You could read a little bit more about that on the link on the PowerPoint differences, and it'll explain to you the differences between the two tests. So a lot of schools are SAT, ACT optional. You don't have to submit your scores, so you want to be mindful of that because if they say that it's test blind, that means they won't even look at your scores if you send them. If it's test optional, that means they will send them. You can send them, and they'll definitely consider them if you send them. So it's really up to you. If they say that it's mandatory, then you have to send the SATs or ACT. So we have some schools that are moving towards requiring SATs since COVID has now subsided, and then we have other schools that are moving towards test optional. So it really just depends. We're just seeing a lot of different trends going on, but you have to just be looking at each individual school and making note of whether or not they require it or not. But always remember that nobody's going to see your score once you take it as long as you don't send it anywhere. So you can take it and see how you do, and then if you don't like your score or you're not happy with it, you don't think it's a good reflection of your abilities, you just don't send it. Okay? You can read more about super scoring and score choice on the links. But Bridgewater State is having an SAT prep course. I think it's like $400. It's like 5 or 6 Saturdays. We've had kids take it before, found it really helpful, but it is an in-person one, so it's nice. So if you're like an in-person person that wants to be able to prep with a person in front of you, that would be something to think about. But there's CAP test and then Academy as well. Okay. All right, so the college decision process is a very thorough process in which you're all going to navigate over the coming months. And some of the things that we want students to start thinking about is where is it that they see themselves happy? Are they happy being in a very large school? Do they want to be in a small school? Are they happy being in the city, in a suburban location? Because every college has its own personality, and so we can't stress enough how important it is to actually get out on a college campus and visit it, because not every student is going to enjoy going to a school like UMass Amherst that has 30,000 students on campus. Not every student's going to be happy going to Wheaton or Stonehill, where it's a very small school in a very suburban location. There's not a lot to do in that area. So you have to really think about what it is that you are comfortable with. So we're going to do this in our individual meetings with our juniors. We're going to actually have them do a college search. And there's criteria that you can select, and we'll go over that in later detail on how to do that. But just when you're going through this process with your child, it's important to get them to think about those things. Because a lot of kids transfer out of colleges their first year because they didn't visit the campus, so they didn't do enough research to really figure out whether or not this was the right school for them. All right, so we have college fairs we'll talk about later, but we do have virtual visits coming up in the fall where they do come to our school to meet with students. But okay, so then we have students will be in the coming months thinking about whether a school is a target, a reach, or a probable school for themselves. We always recommend that kids apply to 5 to 10 schools. That's like a good average number. But we do have kids that apply to less, and we have kids who apply to more. But we feel like this is a good ballpark figure of schools that you should strive to have in your list. And one of the things we want students to do is to think about what is going to be a target school for you. What's going to be a school that you're matched really well in, academically, financially. They have your major, and the feel of the school really matches your personality. Then we have the probable schools, which really are like safety schools, meaning that your criteria that you have is well above what the average incoming freshman at that school has. So you know that this is going to be a school that you're most likely going to get into. It's very affordable. They have everything you want. So we want to have some probable schools. We want to have some target schools. And then we always encourage kids to have some reach schools. Maybe a school that you don't have the average GPA that school is looking for. Or maybe it's a little bit more money than you want to be spending. Or maybe, but we call them like dream schools because they're schools that maybe, they have everything, but it's just, you don't quite fit the criteria. So we encourage kids to put that on there. You have no obligation to go to the school. You can apply, see what happens, and then go over all your options after all the acceptances come in. All right, so then we have down at the bottom here, keep in mind your specific major's competitiveness. At some schools, you may be probable for the general admission criteria, but for a specific major, it might be a reach. So what that means is, if you apply to a school as a business major, as opposed to a nursing major, you might fit the criteria for the business program at that school, but the nursing major, because there's only 40 slots and there's 4,000 people applying to those slots, you might not, that might be a reach. So that's something to think about too. The competitiveness of the program also will dictate whether it's a reach, a target, or a safety school. Okay, so Massachusetts colleges and universities, they would like their students to have a 3.0. That's their goal. However, if you have below a 3.0, the Massachusetts State Colleges, universities and colleges do have a sliding scale that they hold kids to, that they would like them to meet, should they not have a 3.0. So here's the two charts here. One is for the University of Massachusetts, and the other one is for the State University of Kansas.
And just so everyone knows, we're going to share this PowerPoint with you. We understand like how tiny this is, so Ms. Tremblett's going to go over it, but we will share it, so you'll be able to see all of this and go through it on your own time as well.
Yeah.
But it's so tiny.
Yeah. So just know that you know you can find the scale anywhere on the internet. This is a pretty public document. It's just basically saying that if you have a 2.5 GPA, then they would like you to have a 1030 on the SAT or a 20 on the ACT. Okay? Now, the average SAT score is a 1080, so they're not asking for anything extraordinary, but they are just holding you accountable for another piece of information that you need to provide to them. Okay? If a student does have below a 2.0, then unfortunately you cannot be accepted to any state college or university. So you would have to, as said here on the right, you would have to go to a community college first, bring your GPA up, and then apply as a transfer student to the four-year college. Okay, so there's always options. So you just have to pay attention if you're falling below a 3.0 and you want to apply to a state college. And again, as I said before about you have to pay attention to the different programs because the GPAs are higher sometimes than some other programs. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Payne, who's going to do the Naviance piece.
Thank you, Ms. Tremblett. That was a lot that she had to go through. I'm going to be going through Naviance. I'm Mrs. Payne, so I have the letters F-I through N. And actually, Ms. Tremblett didn't mention, but she and I both have juniors in high school also right now. So we're right there with you guys. Ms. Tremblett already has an older son, and Ms. Mayman has kids who went through high school.
Sorry, this is college.
In college, in graduate school. So anyway, Naviance. I think all the students in here would say they're familiar with Naviance. It's something that we've been doing in advisory for the last 2 years. We haven't touched on it yet this year in advisory yet, but we will, it's coming. So, it's easy enough. You Google Naviance if you're using your home computer. There is a class link for you on your Chromebook. So type in Naviance, and this is the page that comes up. It's a new interface, so if you don't remember from last year, that's okay. It has a new look. So you would select here, parents and students. So Ms. Neiman, click enter, because I think on the next page, it shows you. Yeah. So you enter our zip code for North Dayton, 02764. And then you click on Dayton Public High School. If you have any trouble logging in, you contact your counselor and they can help you access it. So after you sign in, so important messages are up there. There's a little envelope up there, and there are messages that go in there. Those messages are usually sent to your email as well, because your email is linked to the Naviance account. And the first thing we're going to talk about, because Ms. Tremblett did mention resume. In the corner there, your initials will be in the corner. You click on that, About Me, and this is the About Me page. And as you can see here, it starts with resume at the top, or Ms. Neiman's circling. You can go through your goals, portfolio. You've already created a portfolio. You might not know it, but you've been working on one for the last couple of years when you fill out your assessments in Naviance. And then down below, you'll see surveys from your school, and we'll talk more about that moving forward as well. Okay, so About Me, assessments and surveys. So this student here, this is a senior whose page I captured. You can see here this student has already done their career cluster finder, career interest profiler. These are all surveys and inventories that students have taken in their freshman year, sophomore year. And then if you haven't yet, that's okay. You can take them now, you can retake them. You might remember, the students might remember taking these. Do you like to study where it's warm or cold? Do you like to work out in the fields, or do you like to work at a computer? You guys remember that? Kind of silly questions. There's like 180 of them. A lot of you were like, So it's a pretty old assessment, but it came out with something that you might have a knack for, and could give you different careers. And so any of these you can retake. The student has done all of them. And on the left-hand side, you can see the surveys. So I have to go back and look, I'm not sure if we had you guys do a freshman survey, but it would be kind of cute to read it now. The student did, and a brag sheet, and the brag sheet is something that we use when we write you a letter of recommendation, so we'll talk more about that in your senior year, which is just a few months from now. So career exploration, so like I said, if you haven't done any of those interest inventories, you still can, or you can redo them. So at the top of the page, there's these tabs: home, self-discovery, careers, colleges, plan. Under careers, you can explore careers and do any of those. So I think you can go to the next one in just a minute. So this is the big action item that you can do: the career interest inventories, the personality, the learning style, all of those type of inventories, assessments, surveys. You can do all of that on your own time. If you want to redo them, you can. What we like to do is have students start searching for colleges. So you can Google on the internet, you can find college planners through the College Board or any other internet engine search thing that you want to use. We pay for Naviance, so the students create their portfolio, and it's a really nice way to look for schools. So we'll show you this again in our one-on-one meetings, but just so you know, at the top of this page is colleges, next to the careers. If you go over to the left side, advanced college search. That's the one we love to use because you can enter a lot of criteria there. So let's do that in a minute. Click on the next page. Okay, so this is what the advanced college search looks like. This is the first page of it. So this student right here is looking for a four-year school. You can choose 2-year, 4-year, no preference. So if we're looking for 4-year colleges for a bachelor's degree, we'd enter 4-year. Public versus private, right here. You can put no preference. Of course, the less criteria you put in, the more colleges will come up. So if you want to narrow it down, you could select public. If you want to just look at our public schools in Massachusetts, you can do that. So you could select public if you'd like. Perhaps you only want private except for some reason, you can select private, or no preference, it pulls up more schools. Now, don't click anything yet, Ms. Bayman, just hover over location, please. Okay, so location, I didn't put all the screens on this because you'll see it when you're going through it. Location, you can choose your zip code and say I want to travel, I only want to college within 60 miles of this zip code, 120 miles, 180 miles. So you're thinking to yourself an hour away, 2 hours away, 3 hours away. You can do New England. You can choose by state, any type of, mid-Atlantic or south, or just choose by state. You can choose anything like that. Students is population of students. You'd be surprised at some of the sizes of these colleges. So sometimes as counselors, we're nerdy and we want to see how you can search for different schools. You'd be surprised about the enrollments at some of these schools. You might think it's a huge school, but it might be a huge school because it has a huge graduate school. This is all about undergraduate. So there's the students. You can search for small schools based on the population of the student body. Admissions, to be honest, we do shy away from the admissions tab. The admissions tab is based on what the school reports to Naviance, and I don't know if it's always that up to date. We could ask our admissions reps, but I tried to get Harvard to come up one day, so I selected like less than 25% acceptance, and I still couldn't get it to come up, and we all know Harvard probably has like a 0.5% acceptance or something, so I don't always click on admission, but you can play around with that. Athletics, if anyone's interested in playing athletics, playing a sport in college, you can choose D1, D2, D3. Majors, of course, very important to choose a major, that helps you narrow it down. You can, costs and special programs, of course, more, you can fine tune the criteria there as well. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so this person searched here, so it's so small, but it says there, 4-year school in a large city, small city, a large town, within 60 miles of our zip code, with an enrollment between 2,000 and 5,000, and it has an accounting and business management major. So schools came up. One school here is Bentley, another one's Fisher College. Let's say you're like, you can click on it actually. You don't click on it now, Ms. Stevens, it's not live, but you can click on it, it brings you to the school's profile, and then you're like, oh, I think I want to think about this more. And so it's a really nice name here, add to colleges I'm thinking about, so you're going to think about it. So this student here is going to click on the button over there and put the heart on it. It's kind of like Instagram, and it's a college you're thinking about, and now it goes into your colleges I'm thinking about. There's two options: colleges I'm thinking about, colleges I'm applying to. So right now we're putting them in colleges I'm thinking about. So if you were to have clicked on that school, that one was Bentley, but here's a picture of URI. It comes up here. Again, lots of tabs, but tells you about the school. So keep in mind, this is what the school, URI, has reported to Naviance. So it's as up to date as URI has told Naviance to update it. If you want more specific information, there's the link, uri.edu, on there as well. So it gives you a snapshot of the school, pictures, student life, admissions, top majors, things like that. Aha, colleges I'm thinking about. I love that title. Okay, so now this person here has colleges they're thinking about. They have 4 schools right here. You can see that little screen. CA is inside it. That means it's a Common App school. Uses the Common application. It's one application you can send to all schools. So many of schools in our country use this. There are some that don't. You'll find out in Common App which ones don't do or don't, but most do. You can see here also that you can organize this by your deadlines. You can decide when to apply, and you can keep it all organized here. You can search for schools. Let's just say your parents were like, oh, I went to this school. Why don't you put this one in? You can search for it right there. Search for colleges. So you'll start to learn this. It's not all that difficult, but we will go over this with you when we meet with you. Okay, well this page changed on us last year. So this person here, these are the colleges they're thinking about, and now they're wondering, how does my hard data, like my GPA and my SATs or ACTs, stack up against students that go there? Well, they used to show us how it matched up against students who went there in their entire population, but now it's only showing us how your GPA and your standardized test score matches up against students from DR who applied there and went there. So it's a much small sample shot or sample size or pool of students. But this person here is a 95.67 GPA. If you look down, Champlain College, their average GPA, the DR student who went there, was a 90.5. Green check mark next to it means it's a probable, isn't it? Probable, or a match, I would think. Fairfield University, that's where I went. There's their average GPA. This student happens to be a little bit below it. I would say not to apply. The GPAs are rather close, a 96 and a 98. And then the SAT, their SAT is a match, the green check mark next to it. So you can kind of compare yourself that way. Just another piece of your application is your hard data, which is your GPA, standardized test score. And that's under Compare Me. College visits. So during the pandemic, schools went to virtual visits, and that was very helpful during the pandemic. Some schools still do that, which means it's like a Google Meet or Zoom, and some schools still do that. We do like to have the schools' admissions reps, which I can see we have them here in the back now, come to the school and meet with students in person. It's just a much nicer connection. The virtual is very convenient, but when the admissions reps come to us, it's during the school day. The kids spend about 15 minutes, maybe a half hour with the admissions rep, just talking with them and getting to know more about the school. So it just depends on the mode in which the admissions reps want to meet with students. So we do post them on Naviance, so you'll see them all in here under colleges and college visits. And so we do recommend demonstrating your interest in our admission tests. We'll talk to you more about that also. And I think it's me with students. Alrighty.
So I'm going to talk a little bit more about letters of recommendation. Most colleges do want to see an academic teacher letter of recommendation. So it is important, especially in your junior year, to be thinking about the teachers that you have right now, because oftentimes they want to see either a teacher from your junior year or a teacher from your senior year. We do have one teacher that I think you know is retiring, and that would be Mrs. Rose. So anybody who has Mrs. Rose should be asking Mrs. Rose this year, okay? If that's something you're thinking about. So think about that and make sure you ask them in person first, and then next year what we'll do is have you ask them through Naviance. You have to have your resume completed before you ask them through Naviance. So we're gonna all make sure that your resumes are pretty well done before you leave here this year. Okay, that's one of your big tasks, and Mom and Dad can help you with that too, because oftentimes you don't think about everything that should be on your resume. and they have some good ideas for you too. But so do we. So when we meet with you individually, we'll try and get you thinking about that. The resume that's in Naviance is something that's great because you can add to it. It's a working document, so it doesn't have to be finished. So if you get some awards, like in the springtime or in the summer, you do something really awesome and you want to add to it, you can add to it then as well. Okay, students are also sometimes needing a guidance counselor letter recommendation. Not all colleges require this, but we write a letter that is more holistic about you, and that's why we ask you to do the brag sheet, because the brag sheet really helps us write what you think is more important. It gives you a voice. It tells us like what you think you would like the admissions counselors to know about you, and sometimes it's not just about your academics, but maybe it's something personal, maybe it's a hardship that you went through, different things that we'll talk about individually and try to make a really nice holistic view of who you are as a person. Your academic teachers are going to really focus on you in the classroom and your resume. Okay. So college financing. We'll go over this more in depth next year in the fall. We always have a representative from the MIFA organization, Massachusetts Education Financing Authority. They come out and they do a really nice presentation all about financial aid and scholarships and all the information that you might need to know. If you do click on that link, it brings you to a great website that offers so much information. So I would encourage you to, when you're in this presentation, looking at it later, to click on that link and go ahead and look at, they have webinar events, they have blogs, they have podcasts. Each year they have they also have like counselors that will help parents and students individually. So it's a really great tool to have in your pocket. The next thing I want to talk about is the mass transfer, and I'm hoping that our college panel will talk a little bit about this. Maybe Brett from Westfield State will give us a little bit of information about that. This is a program that goes through our community colleges, and it's a direct transfer, so you go there for your first 2 years, and then you transfer directly to a state school or another university for the rest of your, completing the rest of your academic 4-year program and then get your bachelor's degree after that, okay? The New England tuition break, that's another great resource for you to take a look at. Can you click on that? Scroll down. Can you click on the Massachusetts one for me? On the right-hand side. So some of our Massachusetts schools do not, our state schools do not offer certain majors. So if you scroll to the middle and you click on, I don't even know if you'll be able to see it, but very down to the bachelor, it will list, it'll give you a list, and sometimes there are things like, I know UNH has a dairy, I think, operations science major that you can't find in Massachusetts, so that gives our students from Massachusetts a break if they go there because we don't offer it. So it's just an example of some other different things that you could major in different states and still get the tuition that we pay in Massachusetts, okay? Yep. Thank you. So communication and next steps. We do have a Google Classroom, a Guide School Classroom. That's the code up there. We've given it to your students, your children. It gives you a lot of information. We try to keep up to date, all sorts of information in there, and kind of summer programs that might cross our way, and kind of fairs that are coming up, college fairs. So it's a great resource that we try and update as often as possible. We also have the guidance newsletter. Click on the newsletter. guidance newsletter has a wealth of information. We update that monthly. It's also in the Falcon newsletter, and this is where you can find information all through. We have the SATs, the College Board. It's been there for all month. All this information. We also list, who's gotten into our college, and for our seniors, we break it down by grade level, all sorts of information in here, and we update that monthly. And Mrs. Tremblett also emails it to you directly. So if you're checking your emails, and get one from Mrs. Tremblett. That's the newsletter, okay? The next thing will be our individual meetings, which we'll have anywhere between March and May. We do spend between half an hour to 45 minutes, sometimes a whole hour, going through this whole process with your child. So if you have questions, I've had sometimes parents who will come in and want to join that meeting. That's fine too, you can do that. And then others who've said, do your meeting, email Mrs. Maitland and ask her my questions after. Okay, so that's fine too, however you want to do it.
Yeah, we have two.
The informational packet, I just want to kind of go through that. If they're all out and you didn't get one, we do have a QR code.
Okay.
But if you go through this packet, it just has a timeline in the beginning. Going back. The testing information is there. Resume information. This is the individual meeting that we do Google. We do a Google Doc with the students, so when we share it with them. So if after our meeting you have questions, you want to see what we talked about, we're often adding into here what we talked about, okay? I'm going to go all the way through, keep going, and show you everything that we're going to go over with your child. And we have tips for if you're visiting schools, and we really do encourage you to get out there and visit schools, just things to ask. And a glossary of terms, because sometimes people are like, I don't know what she's talking about. And so this is really helpful to have. Scroll through. If you decide to go on a college visit that is during school, as a junior, juniors get 3 excused absences, and as a senior, you get 3 excused absences. But you have to fill out that form, and you have to get it signed by an admissions rep when you're at the school, okay? To bring it back. The transcript release form, we need that from every parent so that when your child's ready to request their transcript to be sent, we can send it. So you're basically signing off that you're allowing us to send their transcript to the college. You'll still be able to see what colleges they're sending it to through Naviance, and we can't send it though without your permission. So if everybody could rip off that page right now, we'll get that out of the way and sign it and hand it back to us, that would be great. If you don't have a pen, you have some pens up there, you can do that on the way out too. But that would be really helpful. It's the last page on the form. The NIAS Spring College Fairs, there's a bunch of college fairs out there. This is also in the PowerPoint. You can see there's one at Merrimack coming up. They all seem to be in May, so you can look at that and see where you want to. There's also a link down there to the website, and that's over 100 colleges and universities. They set up little booths, and you can go and you can talk to the admissions rep and get information from them. So we encourage you to do that as well. Every August, the week before school starts, we also have college application boot camp, and we've done it for the last 2 years, and our kids find it to be really helpful. It gets them started. They complete the Common App, the nuts and bolts of it, So they get a lot of it done, and then all they need to kind of work on are like the essay and things like that, and putting in some of their activities and making it look nice. But for the most part, it gets so much of that work done during that time. So we encourage you to do that. Look for our information, sign up for that, and get that piece out of the way so you're not stressing so much about it come fall senior year when you're trying to do all your academics, okay? So hopefully you'll join that. Okay, what I'd like to do now is introduce our panel and have them come on up here. I think they're standing in the back. I think you're gonna have to come down the middle aisle, like, come on up here. We have Brett Dooley from Westfield State, Emily Becco, if I kill your name, I'm so sorry, from WPI, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, and we have Sarah Thomas Howard from Stonehill College. And Sarah's been with us like for 3 years in a row, I think, maybe 4. So I might still mess up the last name. But thank you guys for being here. I'm going to ask you a few questions. I'm going to open the floor with a couple, and then we'll let you guys ask them too. So if you guys just want to start really quickly, just talking a little bit about what you feel is most important for a junior right now, and maybe a little bit about your school, and we'll go from there.
Hi everyone. I'm so sorry. No one needs to hear that. Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm an Associate Dean of Admission at Stonehill College and the coordinator of all the transfer admission to the school as well. So I've worked with both incoming freshmen and students who are transferring to Stonehill from other institutions. As you've heard, I've been here a few times, so I'm excited to be back here at DR. I've been doing this for about 8 years now, so I've worked with families at all different points in the process at Stonehill. I would say that the most important thing to do as a junior right now is to take a deep breath and know it's going to be fine. This is all very important information. It's all really great to know that, know the terminology, know the lingo, know sort of what the road ahead of you looks like, but there's really no rush. This is a process that I think if you want to rush through it, it can become really stressful and really frustrating. But if you pace yourself and do a little bit at a time, right? So maybe use spring break to visit 1 or 2 schools, use summer to visit a couple of more, and then save the fall for schools that you would really like to revisit. The process of visiting schools won't become overwhelming. If you start the Common App in August, you won't be rushing in October. So you may catch my drift here. If you just pace yourself and say, I'm going to try to do this project a little bit at a time, it does not need to consume your life. It does not need to become overwhelming. The other thing I would recommend is try and protect your peace as much as possible in this process. I actually heard this advice from another college counselor this fall, and I think it's incredible. The college process is not a group project between you and everyone who asks. It is between you, your parents, and your guidance counselor. Those are the 3 stakeholders in this whole process. You don't need to compare your list to people, to your cousin, to your neighbor, to your classmate. This is an individual journey. You are allowed to keep your list private. You are allowed to not tell people where you're visiting and save it for a fun reveal at the end. I wish more people did this because I think comparison is the thief of joy, especially in this process. So pace yourself, and it's okay to tell your family we're not going to talk about where my kid's looking at colleges, or I'm not going to share where I've gotten accepted to over this Thanksgiving. So the holidays can get a little crazy with that. So just keep that in mind that, this can be as personal and as private as you would like it to be.
That was good. So I'm Emily Bucco. I'm one of the counselors that works at WPI. I'm an associate director there in the office. I've been hired for over 18 years. I've been with WPI for about 6. And I love panels, so I'm actually glad you guys are all here, and I'm happy to be back again this year. I will probably talk more about WPI later as we get into some questions, but I think just to kind of tack on to what Sarah said, I think one of the things to do as a junior, I always kind of joke in my office that one of the many signs of spring is juniors on campus. And I kind of joke about that, but it's true, and I think exactly what Sarah said, it never hurts to visit a campus. I think just start the process. It's always just ripping off the Band-Aid. People are scared to just make the visit, but there are so many options, especially now since post-COVID. A lot of people have virtual visits and test it out and just see and go on one and be like, wow, I loved it or I did not love it, and you're off and running. And it's a great way, a slow start to a process that will start to demystify that process the more you see. So as a member of our campus visit team, that's the other hat I wear in our office. I'm a big component of just getting out there to see what's around. Even if it's a school that you're like, no, or I'm gonna go with my friend because they really wanna see it, just see what you like and what you don't like, and it will help you form your list.
Hi everyone, I'm Brett. I'm the senior admission counselor at Westfield. I'm not as seasoned in admissions, it's only my second year, but I've been a part of Westfield for 7 years now. So they kind of talked about what I would have talked about. I think the most important thing as a junior is just go see these campuses. I think it's really hard sometimes to really get a feel of what the community is when you're looking through a website and kind of just looking at pictures. You're going to get a much better understanding when you're actually interacting with students, some faculty members, and you're actually going out there. And again, like Sarah said, if you're not building it up and doing 10 visits in a day, it can take a lot of stress off you. So definitely just make that effort to start making that list. You don't have to go to every school you might be thinking about, but just start kind of knocking away at it. It's going to make that process a lot easier.
I don't know if it's better for you to list things and things. How about that? Or do you want to just let the crowd? Or you can crowd?
Questions too.
Yes.
Does anyone have a burning question?
I know.
Yeah, this is
I
good
know.
fun.
Okay,
So-
stand up.
My question actually is twofold, and I say this for parents who've never been through any of this process, because we're going through it with another student here now, and then my grandson next year. But if you could talk a little bit about when you submit your application, the time process and the time elements from the time you submit your application to the time you might hear from the school whether or not early admissions makes a difference or not versus regular admissions, if you could touch on some of that. And then separately from that, even though that's not.
Great, this, you got, was it Jeopardy? You got it. Okay. So, we have two different types of admissions processes represented here at the table, which I think will help answer your question. So, for WPI and Stonehill, we are a deadline-based school. So we have application deadlines. We both offer a variety of different deadlines depending on what suits your needs. And we'll get into that more individually, but there's also rolling admission. So rolling admission is different in that when you apply to the college, the decision release may come on an individual basis. It's based on when it's read, and the decision may be released as soon as it's read, instead of in a batch release. It also means that you can apply at any point, starting typically sometime in
Really as soon as the Common App opens.
in August. You can start applying in August and all the way through until later on in the year. Whereas at a deadline-based school, there's going to be listed deadlines, and if you apply before that deadline, that's great. But we will not begin reading those applications until that deadline. So as an example, Stonehill has a November 1st deadline for early action. We will not begin reading applications until really November 2nd or 3rd. And we expect early action applications in by that date. And then we batch release those decisions. So we will review all early action applications in a time frame. And then once we are done reviewing those applications, we will release them all together. The other thing that you touched on was, is applying early better? I think the concept of better is so challenging because what is good for student A may not be good for student B, and what might be good for student B could still be different for student C. So better is really individual based on who that student is. So at Stonehill, the person I would say would be best fit for an early action type of application is the student who utilized the college boot camp in August that their high school offered. It's a student who took their spring break to visit colleges. It's the student who started working on their essay over the summer or even at the end of their junior year and has had it edited by September or October of their senior year. And the student who feels that their grades 9 through 11 were an accurate representation of them as a student and does not feel that their grades senior year are going to massively impact their academic portfolio. The student who I wouldn't say would be prepared for an early action deadline is the student who is cramming everything in on October 15th and hoping to get it done by November 1st, but has 2 soccer games, a theater performance, and a trip planned on the last week of October. Because they're the student who's going to hand in a sloppy application, and they probably also haven't talked with their guidance counselor on if their academic portfolio is what should be sent in at that time, and if they could benefit from senior year grades being shown. Early decision is a whole other ballgame. And I'll pass it over to Emily.
We'll talk about early decision. So yeah, so at WPI, we have both early action and early decision, which you might run into in some schools. Not to be confusing, I promise it's more to just have options for students. And so the way I describe early decision and early action to families is, remember, early decision is a binding agreement versus early action is non-binding. So as Sarah was saying, with early action, a student can apply. They're going to get their batch release decision whenever that happens. I think for us, it's November 1st as well, and like mid-January or something like that. And then you have until May 1 to let that school know. Now, some students, I always say, if they answer yes to 3 questions, may be interested in early decision. What does that mean? Early decision, you've fallen in love with, I'll use WPI because we have it. I love the academics at this school. They definitely have the programs I'm looking for. Socially, I get the vibe. I really can see myself and the students that go to school here. And finally, financially, I know that this is going to work for my family. This is the right choice. All 3 of those things I can check off, yes, yes, yes. I'm going to put myself in for early decision and see what happens. If you're admitted early decision, the binding agreement means you're going to be then coming to WPI, which is wonderful if you know 100% this is the school for you, or whatever school's offering early decision. If you're not 100%, that's completely fine, because what I also like to say is, you could love a school academically, you could love a school socially, think that's your community, but maybe financially, you want to shop around. As the mom of one who's 5 years out from college still, but I know that financial component is a big deal. Early action really does allow you to get that decision a little sooner, but since it's non-binding, you have some time to shop around, see what all those other schools are going to give you back for financial packages and merit packages, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, and kind of decide what's the best fit for you by that May 1 deadline. So I think early action provides you a little bit more of that flexibility. Just anecdotally, we have both. I will tell you, WPI early action is far more popular. I would say probably over 50% of our applicant pool comes in early action, especially at the round 1 decision, November 1st, just because I think it's earlier, students might be ready for it, and they know that it's non-binding, so they have until May 1, and all that time in the back end to shop around.
We're a little bit unique in how we do early action, I think. We don't offer early decision, so we encourage everyone to apply early action, just in the sense that, say you're applying for a specific program, somebody like nursing or honors, we encourage those students to apply early action because there are a limited number of seats and options. But if students might not initially meet that criteria, whether that's for a program, for a major, they can always send in those quarter 2 grades when they get it, or they can rework in their application and resubmit it. So just because you didn't get the answer you want from that initial early action doesn't mean you can't reapply. So we probably have 100 or so students that send in a second application that have already applied early action and then apply again with regular decision. So, and we work a lot. I probably had 20 GPA recalcs that students that I'd already recalculated, and then I did again in the last couple of weeks. So it is something where it's really fluid system in that sense.
Something that I don't know if we touched on when we also did introductions is the types of schools we work for. So there's a reason that all 3 of us are here, is that we all represent different types of institutions. We're just so comfortable up here. You know, we just skip right past it. But I work for a private Catholic institution. So our admissions practice is not going to be widely different from other private Catholic institutions.
And so as the tech school representation, a little bit different, and we'll talk about some of the differences in the tech school. We're a little more picky about only a few things, but honestly not that much. But it's a good opportunity to know we're a smaller, we're also private, but fairly representative of what you might see at a tech institute if that's something you're thinking about.
And I am the state representative, so the public school up here. So obviously when it comes to things like requirements for acceptance, there is obviously a little bit of difference from private schools.
You like this one?
Do you want to see what the differences are?
Sure. Okay, so we're all different. How does that work? So for Stonehill and other, private Catholic institutions, There are a couple of things that we do in our review process that will ring true for many schools, but one of them is that we do recalculate, I don't know. We do recalculate the GPA. We put all of our applicants on a 4.0 unweighted GPA scale. We do this because every school has a slightly different weighting system. Some schools don't weight at all, some schools don't even have grades. So we put everybody on the same playing field. And then we look at what's called the strength of curriculum rating. So for us at Stonehill, that's how we determine the level of rigor that a student has taken in their curriculum. So those are the AP classes, honors courses, dual enrollment, accelerated, things like that. We're really looking for a student who's challenged themselves. So if you're cruising at a CP level for freshman year, we'd really be expecting to see you do, challenge yourself a little bit more. So whatever that next level of appropriate challenge is, whether it's accelerated or honors, we'd be expecting to see that increase each year. One of the questions we have up here is, is it better to do, what is considered better, a B in an honors or AP class, or an A in an academic or college prep class? It really depends. So if you had to work your butt off to get that B in that AP Comp Sci class, and then you happen to also get a letter of recommendation from your AP Comp Sci teacher, and they say, wow, the student really put in the work, put in the time, came for extra help, did everything they needed to do to get that grade, I think that is a well-earned B, and I would love to see it. The student who, maybe over-challenges themselves, they jump up from college prep English all the way to AP Lit, and that they struggle in that AP class, I would understand if they dropped down to maybe honors English the next year and didn't continue with AP language. We completely understand that, because maybe that AP class wasn't an appropriate challenge. So as you think about your senior year, think about what's an area that maybe you do well in, that you could level up, that you could really challenge yourself, or maybe there's an area outside of the core academics that you could really see yourself taking an AP level class in, because that's going to show that level of rigor. And for many institutions, that's something that's really important to us. Something that is a little unique too for many private institutions is that we don't accept classes that were taken in 8th grade within the public school system that are sometimes counted towards your 9th grade requirements or high school requirements, so like that foreign language as an example. And we also do not take any business classes or elective classes unless they are at an honors level or higher. So if you're taking financial math, we don't take that, but if you are taking honors accounting, we will take that. So every school is a little nuanced, but that's just an example of what we do at Stonehill.
Okay, so at WPI, what's interesting is you're gonna hear this, I should have said this at the beginning, another thing to do as a junior, don't be afraid to ask questions, because you're gonna notice every school is a little different. At WPI, we don't recalculate GPA. So we just take whatever your high school gives us. We know the school, and if we don't, we get a school profile that comes, everybody's transcript that explains the entire school and kind of where you are within the context of your school. So I like that because we just get to look at you within the context of your school. We're not comparing you to anybody, we just want to see you in this DR context, right? So we don't recalculate the GPA. We love to see A's, we love to see B's, but as Sarah was mentioning, we do like to see rigor too. As a STEM institution, we're a little picky about math and science. I know it's not going to be a huge surprise. Specifically math, we do ask our students to complete through pre-calculus by the time they graduate. The reason for that is the lowest math at WPI is a Calc 1 class. So you have to be able to jump into Calc 1, if not beyond that. So I always tell students, if you're entering your senior year and you've taken pre-calc and you're like, ooh, my choices are calculus, AP Calc, or stats, stay away from the stats. If you're thinking about a STEM institution, definitely pursue a Calc or an AP Calc, because you're going to do it when you get to that STEM program, whatever that happens to be. So sometimes you'll run into that requirement with a specific major, or in the example of WPI, with a specific school. So just think about that as you do your course selection. But for us, it's important, again, to see not only what grades are you getting, but what does that challenge look like? So kind of like what Sarah said, we love to see our students push themselves. We always get that question too about A's in college prep versus like a C in AP. Kind of what Sarah said, I want to see you challenge yourself. We always joke we want A's in hard level classes, but we appreciate, we want you to push yourself. If you're cruising along and getting A's, go ahead and challenge yourself, because chances are good you're going to be just fine. Why do we know that? Because we see it every year on transcripts, so we know that students can do it. So don't worry about that. If you do have questions about course selection or rigor, always feel free to call the admissions offices. If there's something specific you're looking for, they'll go ahead and tell you. The only thing that we're looking for specifically is that pre-calc piece, but that's just unique to us. And like I said, there's no cutoff minimum GPA or anything like that, but it really is a combination of, are you challenging yourself for your coursework? What do you have access to take? Because if your school doesn't offer a class and you're not taking, we will hold that harmless, but also how are you performing in those courses?
And on the end of the table here, we do a weighted GPA recalculation, and because we're a state school, we're sanctioned by the Department of Higher Education. So when it comes to the question of, is it better to get a B in an AP, ultimately it comes down to it's a weighted system. So for us, we can only do the calculation that we're given from the state. So it is better for students to get an A in a CP course than it might be to get a C in an AP. So it's a little bit difficult because if you were to get, I believe a B plus is the same as an A. A B plus in honors is the same as an A in a CP course, and that is something where we do like that. If it comes out to the same GPA, it is something where, especially if you're applying for a specific program, we like to see that students are challenging themselves. But ultimately, whatever is really going to give you the higher GPA is what we advise students to get. And question in the back.
So again, my mouth seems to always keep going. But I'm gonna ask I'll ask two questions so I can get the answers from all of you at the same time for myself and everyone else. The questions I have first, the first question is, could each of you talk about the different relationship to how you look at GPA for example, general studies or liberal arts versus a specific school that you have, and how you look at that in terms of your calculation as to admittance, for example, a 3.2 versus a 3.7 for something else. And the reason I ask that is because a lot of times what I'll hear schools say is, instead of choosing a specific, put liberal arts. So if you could address that. The second question for each of you is going to be, how much emphasis do you put on what students do out of the classroom? For example, sports, volunteerism, working, etc. How much of that shows you the rounding of the student?
So those are great questions. So at Westfield, we only have a number of programs that have specific GPA requirements. Because we're a state school, one of our kind of guidelines is that we can't accept any student with a below a 2.0 GPA. So that is really the only kind of deterring factor when it comes to pure acceptance. We do have a couple of programs such as nursing, education, health science that have specific major requirements. We always encourage students apply for what you are going to get into, whatever you're really interested in, because just because you have applied for nursing and you don't meet that particular GPA calculation, you wouldn't be denied from the university. You would then be accepted into either whatever you put as your second major, or we put it to that liberal arts. We call it undecided or exploratory. So that's what you'll be accepted into. And if you decide, all right, there's a different major that I might rather do than exploratory, you can always send us an email, reach out to us, and we can see if you meet the GPA requirement for that other program. So that's kind of that first question. And the second question was about
Extracurricular activities.
Again, because we're a state institution, we are sanctioned to really only accept purely on acceptance into the school, just on GPA. So we look on GPA and then test score a little bit if students are required to get into that. Anything, letter recommendational, personal essay, extracurricular activities, those are really, when it comes to second reviews for students that might not meet initial GPA guidelines, or specifically when it comes to programs such as honors or other admission-based programs that we have at the school. But just in terms of general acceptance, we really base about 95% of our acceptance is based on pure GPA.
So a WPI a little bit different, and this is unique, maybe even WPI for tech schools. We actually offer what we call institutional acceptance. So you can pick any one of the over 50 different degree programs we happen to offer. We admit everybody at a certain threshold, right? If you're accepted, anybody who comes to WPI can pursue whatever flavor of engineering, science, math, computer science, business, whatever you want. Anybody can do it, because we've kind of held the standard, which is why we're a little specific about math, we've held the standard pretty high. So once people come into WPI, they can pick whatever they want. Now that's not true at some larger institutions where you may have to apply into an engineering program or into, for example, nursing, et cetera, et cetera. So that is a really good question that will vary from institution to institution. At WPI, about 20% of our students come in undecided. So I love that we don't have to admit to a major, but really when students get here, they can pursue whatever they want, and like 50% of our students who come in thinking they want one thing actually change their mind. So We're lucky in that there's a ton of flexibility for students to change their mind as well, because so many of our programs kind of cross-curriculum anyway, that it offers a lot of flexibility for our students. In terms of extracurriculars for us, they are important, but I do always like to say, it's not about the quantity of things that you do, but really quality. Like, we understand that, we want to understand you and your personal context. So, you know, we know you go to high school, right? We know you're in class most of the day. What happens in your time outside of school? I always joke that maybe you sleep at night. I don't know, maybe you don't. Some high school students don't. But what happens? Are you working 25 hours a week, and so you can't have time to get involved with sports or clubs or athletics? Or maybe you have hobbies, or maybe you volunteer, or maybe you have family responsibilities, and you take care of younger siblings or aging grandparents. Whatever the case may be, that information on the Common App about what happens with your time outside of school really allows us to understand all the different things that you are juggling on a daily basis. And so I always like to say, the Common Application, which we are on, is a great way for us to see a student's personal context, and those extracurriculars, whatever they are, however it looks, helps us kind of understand all the different things that you're doing on a daily basis. So they're helpful for us. I always tell students, don't lose sleep over it, but be thoughtful about what you think you want to include, because the more we know about you, the more we understand about kind of you within your context.
So similarly, Stonehill, we admit to the institution. We don't admit based on major. So we don't have a separate review process for a bio major compared to an English major. We do like to see students prepared for the major that they are applying to. It does not mean that a student without pre-calculus won't be admitted to our biology program, but it just means that you're probably going to be behind in terms of the courses that you need to take. And we would maybe recommend you take pre-calc over the summer before arriving to campus, since the first class you take would be calculus. In terms of extracurriculars, I feel like the mic hates me, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. In terms of extracurriculars, I heard this phrase and I think it kind of sums it up nicely. They matter more than you think, but less than you want. So they matter, you know, seeing a blank activities list is a real bummer. But I haven't had an activities list be the reason that we admit a student if the grades weren't there. So the first thing is that almost every school has to look at is grades, because we need to make sure that you're academically prepared for our institution. That's our job as admissions counselors. We are in the business of admitting students who are prepared for our institutions. And the reason at a school like Stonehill that a student wouldn't be admitted, it's because they weren't prepared and there would be a significant gap in readiness into coming to our institution. So if a student isn't prepared and shows signs of a significant gap, the activities list, as robust as it could be, it wouldn't be the reason that the student would end up in our admit pool. Just to jump back to the admitting based on majors, you heard nursing and engineering. Those are sort of the two, and I would add architecture in there. Those are sort of the consistent defenders of the special conditions admissions situation. So many institutions will have test policies, right? Testing, SAT, ACT policies, except for engineering, nursing, and architecture. And the reason is because of the accreditation that those programs need to carry. They require certain metrics when going through the admissions process. So if any of you are thinking about engineering, about nursing, or architecture, I do recommend sitting for the SAT, and I do recommend talking with your counselors about doing a deep dive into what the programs you're looking at require, because they may be different than for schools where you're just looking at a math major or an education major.
Should we talk about testers? Did you bring that?
Sure.
Let's go there.
That's what you do.
Yeah. So only because Sarah just mentioned it, I'm going to throw out there that we were talking about test optional and test blind, and we need the SAT scores, and how with COVID kind of threw everything upside down and around, and everyone was moving back to whatever they were doing potentially post-COVID. So again, just ask or find it on the school's website. Know that every school is different. At WPI, we're actually are test blind, and that's something we are holding on to. We were moving in that direction, and then COVID hit, and we kind of stumbled on it a little bit, but then we went test blind. So test blind basically means that your standardized test scores are not used in any way, shape, or form in the evaluation process. So even if you submit them, we never see them, so don't submit them. Save your money. Submit them somewhere else. We'll use them. Prior to being test blind, we were test optional for a number of years, and we were the first polytechnic institute to do that. But the reason we did it was to say, okay, we want to move in test blind direction, but basically test optional is as it sounds. You can submit your test scores if you want to, if you think they represent who you are as a student, free. If you don't feel that way, then you don't have to submit them, that's fine too. A lot of test optional schools would provide like an average. And if you looked at your averages and, wow, these are not in the average, maybe I won't submit them. I promise you it is optional. Schools, even when I ran it for WPI, we didn't judge you for not submitting them. It really is another piece to the puzzle, and if you choose not to submit, you don't have to. The reason we went test blind was after compiling 14 years of test optional data from our submitters and our non-submitters, we wanted to see if there was a difference in their graduation rates and their retention rates. And there wasn't a difference. After 14 years of data, our non-submitters and our submitters were retaining and graduating at the same rates. So that's ultimately why we got rid of it, but that's a good thing to remember when you're seeing all of these kind of test fill-in-the-blank terminologies, understand the differences. So test blind means they're not even a possibility, don't worry about it. Test optional really does give you the choice and put you in the driver's seat. And so that's good to know as well.
We are test optional at Westfield. I always encourage students, if you've taken the SATs, you've taken the ACT, include them. They can only bolster your resume, especially when it comes to, again, specific programs. Like I'm reading a sheet here that says, is there a deciding factor if two students might have the same GPA, but one has higher test scores? If a student does have excellent test scores, that can certainly bolster if you're kind of on the cutoff for a specific program. We see this a lot when it comes to nursing. We're a little bit rare, where even for our nursing program, we are test optional. Really for our other programs, we don't look at the test scores all that much. But again, it can be a deciding factor between students. But again, it's not something we're ever gonna look and say, this student has lower test scores, let's mark them down a grade. We don't ever kind of use it as a negative impact on the student's application.
You'll probably figure out there's a common theme with this whole admissions thing. Every school's a little different. So we're each representing sort of a genre of school, but there are also a million other ways that you could categorize colleges, and there's still room for 5 or 6 colleges, on this panel. So no matter what school you're applying to or what your path is, I would really recommend, if you have questions, just be prepared to just send out an email to each of us and say, hey, I'm applying for, fall of 2025. I just have a couple of questions. Get back to me when you can. I love nothing more than a bulleted list of questions. I'll get back to you in the same format as fast as possible because I love those emails. So don't ever hesitate to, you have a curiosity, you can't necessarily find the answer on the website, we'll help you out. Ooh, the essay. Oh, you got a hand, sorry.
I kind of related to the essay. With schools, when you're applying, is it better to make a more well-rounded portfolio of your academics, your classes that you're taking, your extracurriculars, whatever, or does it make more sense to put it more focused towards your major? Say you were an English major, you focus on taking APs and English classes, you take extracurriculars regarding English, that kind of thing.
That's a great question. I think, and this is when I think we really can only speak for our institutions, and it gets dicier the further we get broader, because I don't know what Holy Cross would say about my answer. But, I think for us at Stonehill, I personally want you to use your time however you want to. I think STEM gets a little bit touchier only because it's really that prep, right? So if you're looking at a biology science, a BS degree in biology, we know your first year is Gen Chem, Bio 101, Calc, some general courses, and maybe some other STEMs in physics maybe thrown in there. So we really want to make sure that you have a strong math and science background. That doesn't mean though that we expect every activity you've ever done to be based in STEM, because we probably know at some point you'll burn out, because that's just the reality of school. We want to see you using your time in ways that make you happy, and I think the essay is a really amazing place to do that, because on your activities list, sometimes it can be kind of focused, right? So maybe you're a 3-season athlete, you're also a referee on the weekends, and you volunteer at Coaching for Change. Pretty much all in the athletics department, right? Not a lot of variation there, but that is well-rounded to a certain degree. I'd love it if the essay was not about athletics, because I already know that's what you love. I would love it if that essay told me about your drive to school, or about how you put your right shoe on before your left for X reason, or chocolate milk, or a variety of other things that make you you. My favorite essays in 8 years have been about Taylor Swift, shoes, potatoes, chocolate milk, mowing the lawn, and a drive to school. I will be very honest, I have yet to read a not making a sports team, torn ACL, service trip, grandparent essay, not making a team, making a team, winning or losing a championship game that has not been pretty rinse and repeat. Most of them are the same. There's not a lot of variation. I feel like I could probably fix a torn ACL at this point. I've read so many. I also watched Grey's Anatomy, so mine too, right? There are really special things that make each of you you, that have led you to the place that you're at in life, and some of them are mundane and some of them are silly. Those make the best essays, in my opinion, not the grand gestures, not the big things. So be fun, have fun in high school, try new things, join a club you didn't think you would love, because that's what's gonna get you where you wanna go in life.
Yeah, similar to that question, something that I often get is, what if I was on, the soccer team for 3 years and then I left because I wanted to try something new and I didn't love it anymore. And people are nervous, how does that look if I only did it for 3 years and not 4? It's fine, it's what you did, it's part of who you are. We are not worried about that. An opportunity, you close the door of an opportunity and you open a window somewhere else. Like, that is fine. And so it's okay to have things mix and mingle and try new things, and we understand all of that. And certainly with COVID, everybody was held harmless because so much of this was out of your control. And so remember that too. What was I gonna say about the essay? Well, I'm actually gonna segue from the essay because I agree with what Sarah said. But some applications, and WPI is one of those schools, where we actually will ask you for a supplemental essay. Isn't that fun? I'm really sorry that we ask you for more essays, but some schools do. And when you, when you open up a comment app, you're gonna know which schools are asking you additional supplemental questions. And so that's part of why kind of starting in August and checking that out and seeing what these schools are asking for you is really helpful so you don't panic. But WPI, for example, has a supplementary question that will say, well, why are you specifically looking at WPI? Because we know we're STEM focused, we are a little unique in the way we roll out our curriculum, and that's wonderful. We want to know, what do you know about us and why? So it's a very purposeful question that helps us understand your knowledge and interest in WPI, okay? So those supplemental questions, I promise, aren't there to trick you. They're really sometimes they're just asking for something very specific that the college wants your opinion on. And I will tell you, as we are ending our review cycle, that line of the PI questions, in addition to the essay, are just, again, other ways for us to hear your voice and hear you talk about something that, you don't have any other chance in the application to do that, but this is all you. The essay and these essay questions are all you. So that's one of the things that I always kind of tell students, don't panic about it. You can't write the wrong thing on your essay, but I also agree that there's no way to, you don't have to paint your application a certain way. One thing I'll say about WPI that we notice, although it's not a make or break situation, we're very group oriented. We do a lot of project-based learning at WPI. We like to see students who do a lot of group work, right? So we'll see that if you are involved outside of school or what your time looks like. We're gonna pick up on certain things in your application. Does it have to be in there? No. If you have the experience and you can demonstrate some group work or some leadership, awesome, we love to see it. We're gonna be looking for things like that. But it's not make or break if they're not there, because again, it's what do you have access to do, what do you have time to do? What is your schedule all about?
I would say one thing that I always encourage students to as well is you can really use that essay to bolster your application. We will have students, especially in the last couple of years, that might have had a difficult time during remote learning. And their freshman and sophomore years, their grades are a little bit lower, but they've really been succeeding. We'll have students that talk about those difficult times and say, I'm really passionate about these programs, and tell really their story. And it makes a big difference when you get an understanding. Obviously, we see how much remote learning has impacted students and families, but to really get to put in the words and get that personal perspective, it really does kind of give us a sense of what students are really about. So I think it's another way that you can really only improve it. We're never going to look at it and be like, this person's lying. That's not what we do. And I wrote my essay on definitely a sports game, so I did not do it in the right way. But it is something where we see a lot of students where we can look at a transcript and you kind of think you have an understanding of where a student is, and then you read the essay and you have a whole different light on it. So again, it's not the end of the world. I promise it's not as important as I think you think it is when you're a junior, senior, but it is something that, again, can only help you.
Yeah, I will also say that the boot camp that they run, college admissions officers come in and work on essays with you and bring in draft essays and things like that. So you can see literal examples of essays that I may or may have not read that our office has sort of deemed, great examples and rougher examples. Yes, right over there. Yes.
I know I said I'd stop, but I'm not done. So, but here's my last question, and I know time is short, but there are some parents in the room, probably maybe even some kids, who the kids are on an IEP or a 504. Could you just, because your programs are different, could you talk a little bit about the value and the importance of needing to know that information ahead of time, and potentially what each of your schools can provide? Because I know there are differences between public and private.
That's a wonderful question. Stonehill College, we are a smaller school. We're a school of only 2,500. So in terms of support services, we are probably going to be on the smaller side. I'm so sorry. We're probably going to be on the smaller side. Yeah, that's fine. I'm loud. I think that IEPs and 504s are important are important to know in the context of reading an application when there has been a modification to a student's application, or a student's curriculum. So as an example, if you are waived out of foreign language, but there is a school requirement for foreign language, it's helpful for us to know that the student was on an IEP or a 504, because then we can read the application within the context of what the student was expected to take. If we don't know that, we're just assuming that they didn't take it, and we can't assume that they have an accommodation for it. In general, in the admissions process, we can't make assumptions as to why something is missing. So if a student drops a course senior year or drops a course at some point due to an accommodation where the school says, yes, we are approving this, they will graduate and it's all great, that's really helpful for us to know, and that typically is found for us either the student will list it in their essay, sometimes they do that, the additional info section on the Common App, or in the letter of recommendation from the guidance counselor. For services, I would recommend visiting schools' individual websites because it is very nuanced at the college level. Every student is different. Every student, for the most part, at a college level is reviewed individually based on what their psychoeducational testing was. So it's not based on what the 504 or the IEP in high school was. It's based on the school's everything. Based on the official documentation that you would then bring to the college when they enroll.
Yeah, so we actually have a specific program it's called our Learning Disabilities Program for students with documented learning disabilities and or ADHD. It's housed by our Binaco Center, is kind of the general, is what it's housed under. So we have the LDP, which is an admission-based program students can apply in, and required is just what you need to apply to the school, as well as that psychoeducational testing. We do strongly encourage students to include that IEP or the 504, just so they can get an understanding of what accommodations students might have received in high school. Again, like Sarah said, when it comes to accommodations, it's based off of the psychoeducational testing, not the specific plan the student has in high school. But a lot of times it is something that is very similar. And continuing in that, just because you do not get specifically into that program, we actually still have services where students can, again, provide their testing or their IEP, their 504 to the school and housed within Binaco's, but not the specific program. We can still get accommodation for students. So it is something that we actually have about 10% every year of our students that apply and come in as part of the LDP program, and about another 5% that are still receiving accommodations as a part of our Binaco Center. So it's a very popular program that we've had for a number of years, so it's something that we really kind of want to destigmatize that students might need accommodations. We want students to succeed. We want you to graduate in 4 years. We want you to feel like when you go off to college, it's not just your school, it's your home. So if that's feeling safe in the classroom and feeling like you're going at a comfortable pace, that's a big part of it. So we want students to provide as much information as they can.
I was just going to add one quick thing, that obviously every school is different depending on if it's a separate program. I actually worked at an institution that also had a separate program with the specific testing, but Most schools, including WPI, also have accessibility services, offices that will honor testing if you have it or if you're looking for something. So as you find schools that you're interested in, always be prepared with those questions to see, well, what could you accommodate? What does your accessibility services cover? Because that's an important point of clarification. Now, I think there was, yes.
I have a silly question. Let's say students want to go to a junior college first and then transfer to like a college. What does that process look different than what the regular process is to come in now at this?
So I think, I'll start. Okay, so I work with transfer students, I'm so sorry that this is gonna speak again. I work with transfer students as well as first year. The process is honestly easier for us at Stonehill because it is shorter. I think one of the parts of applying as a first year student that can be really frustrating is that it is, I'm so sorry. It's long. The first year admissions process, it's long. You're starting in August and you are not done until May 1st, most likely, on average. It's long, it's drawn out, it's a production. With transfer, whenever you're ready to apply, within reason, obviously, you will typically get a decision within a week of your application being complete. So say that you are in your you're in your last semester of your 2 years at Massasoit. April rolls around, starting to end the semester, you kind of have a sense of what you want to do next. Apply to your schools, make sure all your documents are sent in. You will likely hear a decision 2 weeks later if you're doing everything sort of timely and responsibly. If you want a long drawn out process, the transfer process can certainly become that way, but it typically is faster because the ownership is on the student to collect their high school transcript, to collect their transcript from their current institution, to get any documents signed off. It's all on the student, and they can literally bang that out in a day. You can sit down and apply for transfer admission in a day. And then everyone will send everything to us. It's almost all electronic. If you're at Stonehill, as soon as the app is complete and we're past the first deadline, I will read it and I will release a decision immediately. There's no batch release, you know, and then we're in contact up until through deposit, and then you move on to the enrollment side of the office. I can't speak for the public institutions because there is the mass transfer program from community colleges to state institutions, and there are other guaranteed transfer admissions programs at different schools throughout Massachusetts that have guarantees with Massasoit or Bristol Community College. Those, to their credit, the community colleges have robust websites that really spell it out for you on what the expectations are for the students while they're in the community colleges in order to transfer seamlessly to another state institution or a partner private institution. I think one of the benefits too of doing a year or two at a community college and then going on to a four-year institution is that for some students, high school is not the greatest 4 years of their life. Mine certainly weren't. Sometimes we need another year to show that we're ready or to even just mature. I meet a lot of high school seniors who could really benefit from maybe a year of balancing schoolwork and a little bit of adult life before going on to a residential college. And sometimes maybe you just had a hard year, maybe adjusting to 9th grade was really challenging, and your GPA isn't where you want it to be to get to that dream school that you have. Private institutions, we love to see students coming from community college because you add such a variety of perspectives, and you come from a different demographic. A school with a different demographic, and so we love to see it because you're also showing readiness in a more clear way than coming out of high school.
I'll be honest, I only work with first year admissions, so I'm not the most kind of versed in that. I know we do work a lot with the mass transfer. I wish my coworker Joanna was here, she could kind of speak better about it, but.
It's all on the website. Oh, transferring. Yeah, so I was gonna say just kind of wearing a couple different hats. Like what Sarah said, we love seeing students go to community college route. I think if there's a specific school or program that you're thinking about, it's a great way to beef up your academic profile, take some of those courses, find At WPI, we have articulation agreements because we're not part of mass state transfer. There are lots of options for students to pursue. It's also money saving if you go to a community college for a year or two before you go to a four-year institution. So we're always talking about transfer pathways. Most schools, WPI included, but I would imagine same is true for both of these schools, it's on the website in terms of what does that transfer process look like, how is it mapped out, and just always knowing that it is absolutely for sure an option. In terms of specific majors, we don't have some of the articulation agreements are specific to engineering or some variety of engineering, and there are some specific courses you want to make sure you've taken at a community college that's unique to some of our programs, so that is on our website, so if you were like, I was thinking about mechanical engineering, so they're like, great, we need you to have XYZ math and XYZ chemistry or physics. We list that on our website, as do many schools. That's part of that articulation agreement, so you know what you have to focus on should you make that choice for yourself.
Now, is it an easier process than coming right out of high school and jumping in? Or is it easier to go to a junior college and then jump in?
In
That's
what
the biggest
way?
question.
Academically, socially?
Let's say the process in general, going from what seemed like a daunting task that we went through right now, to going to a junior college and then, hey, I want to apply to WPI and see how much easier that is.
I think it's probably initially easier because to enroll at a community college, it's really a meeting with an advisor, making sure that your ducks in a row, and then registering for classes. After that, I think it's it's on the student at that point. So once your student turns 18, they're on their own with this whole process. So if your kid goes to community college and they're 19 years old and you want to follow up on their application to WPI, they cannot tell you anything about that application. They can't even tell you if the student's in the system. It's against the law for us. So it really depends on the student. So for some students, they go to junior college because that's what the right next step for them is. If the time comes that they're looking to go to a four-year institution, but they're not at the point yet, maybe maturity-wise, to manage that process, I would say it would be harder than if they applied as an incoming freshman, because as an incoming freshman, mom and dad, you're gonna have a much easier time guiding them through that process because you will be able to talk to the colleges and get a better sense of where the student is at and talk to the high school counselors. Whereas from a junior college to a four-year college, the student is very much on their own and very responsible for their own process. I think transition from high school to college is something that's not talked about enough. I think there could be an entire panel on that alone because I think we spend so much time preparing you guys academically that we sometimes forget about the social emotional part of going away to college. I think our transfer students tend to have a better transition to four-year college than our incoming freshmen do because they've had sort of that middle step. They've had a middle step to adjust to balancing an academic workload, to managing their own academic records without mom and dad's intervention. And then they're taking just one other step to managing their social and residential life, potentially at another four-year institution. So to go back to where we all started, juniors, something to think about over the next year is you've worked hard academically, right? You've thought about your classes, you've put thought into your future. Now think about what are the things that help you regulate your emotions? What are the things that bring you joy? What are the things that you do to decompress when you're feeling stressed out? Because you will need those in your freshman year of college. And if you haven't quite figured those things out yet, I recommend spending some time and energy finding things that can center you, that can bring you joy, to spark joy in your life that you can rely on when things get tough, because that's what's missing, I think, for that transition piece from the different sections of college.
Maybe one last thought, and we can wrap it up. I do want to just mention though, for sometimes with transfer, I have seen that there are some programs at certain colleges you can't transfer into. Nursing comes up that can be very difficult to transfer into. Sometimes housing can be an issue to transfer students as well. So there's pros and cons to every decision, and I think you got to think about what's right for you.
And you can always ask. Especially with our transfer students, I am so direct, and I mean, in case you couldn't tell that I'm direct and honest already, but I'm very direct and very honest with them because this is, this is their process, and you all at any point in this, whether freshman or transfer, deserve honest answers, and that's what we're here for.
Okay, so one final thought from each one of you would be great.
My final thought is almost kind of tying it back to the beginning, something that I think sitting here tonight, even just thinking about in the beginning, we said the first step for juniors is go see the campus. Also, if you're thinking about a school, we are so different, and it's up here, it's so apparent when we're sitting here and answering all these questions. Even go on their website and just learn a little bit about their application process. It's gonna give you a little bit of an understanding and make that process that much easier when you say, these are things that I might need for this program, these are things that I might not. So, again, it just kind of chipping away at that, but again, we want you to come to our campuses, we want you to ultimately, the good thing about admissions is eventually it's gonna get to the point where you don't wanna talk to us anymore, you wanna talk to the students on campus, you wanna talk to the faculty, so we're really just kind of opening the door for you guys. So come on campus and really kind of get into the meat of what's gonna make that decision great, because ultimately, once you get on campus, and if you're gonna be successful in graduating in 4 years, it's probably not gonna be because of us, it's gonna be the people that are really at the institution, so that's the really important piece of that.
Yeah, and the only thing I would say, as different as we are, I think the end goal is we want you to find your next step, whatever that looks like. Maybe that's at a 4-year state school, a private school, a junior college, maybe it's work, maybe it's military. It's gonna look different for everybody. We just want you to help, we wanna help you be successful. And if we think that our institution is the place for you to be successful and carry this on, awesome, right? And if it's not, that's okay too, because there are so many options. And I just wanna make sure that everyone remembers to keep their eyes open to every possibility.
Something that we asked our tour guides to, I shouldn't even have the mic. Something that we ask our tour guides to say at the end of their tour is the why did you come to Stonehill, but why did you stay? I think the why did you go to, when you see your tour guides or your admissions counselors, many of us did attend our institutions, why did you pick that school and enroll, and why did you stay at that school and graduate, tend to be two different answers. Many of us choose where we go to college based on some real facts, but a lot of superficial facts, a lot of assumptions, a lot of feelings, a lot of influences. And then why we stay at that school and we become proud alum tends to be such a very different answer, that I encourage you to ask both. Because sometimes we stop at, oh, well, why did you pick that school? And we're like, okay, great, good answer. But the why did you stay there is the lived experience of the years that they've been there. And that's what's gonna tell you about the character of the school, the makeup of the student body. Because at the end of the day, no matter where you go to school, whether you live there or not, it is your home for 2 to 4 years, maybe even longer. It is important that you resonate with the community. We are all going to house you, educate you, prepare you for the future, feed you, and entertain you. How we do that is different, and it needs to resonate with you, and it might be different for you than your best friend, and that is A-okay. So, do you in this process.
And I just want to say, enjoy this process with your children and your parents' children. It's a wonderful process to go through. You learn a lot about each other. Just enjoy it. Take your time. Try not to stress. We're here for you as well. And thank you everyone for coming tonight. Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. If you have questions,